The evolution of banking is a tale of visionaries and innovators, of triumphs and setbacks. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, finance transformed from family dynasties into global institutions. But behind the numbers are human stories of ambition, rivalry, and resilience. At the dawn of the 19th century, Mayer Amschel Rothschild laid the foundation of a banking dynasty. His 5 sons, Nathan, James, Salomon, Carl, and Amschel, established a financial network that spanned Europe. Their success was driven by innovation, secrecy, and, at times, contentious decisions. Nathan Mayer Rothschild, born in 1777 and passing in 1836, was the 3rd son of Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He was a financial genius who revolutionized banking in Britain and Europe. By the early 19th century, Nathan had established himself as a dominant force in the financial markets of London, building on the family's success in Frankfurt. During the Napoleonic Wars, financial markets were highly volatile, and access to timely, accurate information could mean the difference between immense profit and catastrophic loss. Nathan understood that information wasn't just power, it was the lifeblood of financial success. Nathan Rothschild was introduced to the idea of carrier pigeons through his family's vast European network. In France and Germany, pigeons had long been used to relay messages across battlefields and between cities, thanks to their uncanny homing ability and speed. In the early 1800s, as Nathan expanded his operations in Britain, he realized that relying on conventional communication methods, couriers on horseback or ships crossing the English Channel, was too slow. Reports of Napoleon's movements in key battles often took days to reach London, creating a disadvantage for investors who lacked timely intelligence. Nathan saw pigeons as a practical solution. They could travel up to 100 miles per day, much faster than horseback couriers. Pigeons were small, unobtrusive, and less likely to be intercepted than human messengers. Their reliability, once trained, was unparalleled. Inspired by this method, Nathan invested in training pigeons to carry messages between his European agents and his London office. Nathan relied on a network of trusted family agents stationed across Europe, particularly in Frankfurt, Paris, and Brussels. These agents were tasked with sending updates about political developments, economic conditions, and most critically, military victories or defeats. The Rothschilds hired experts to breed and train pigeons to ensure they would return to predetermined locations. Special pigeon lofts were established in key cities. Each agent was trained to attach tiny coded messages to the pigeon's legs. During battles or major events, Rothschild agents would observe the outcomes and immediately send messages via pigeons. In London, Nathan's clerks would decode the messages, allowing him to act on the news before anyone else in the financial markets. The pivotal moment for Nathan's pigeon network came in June 1815, during the Battle of Waterloo. The battle, fought near Brussels, determined the fate of Europe. Napoleon was defeated by the British-led forces under the Duke of Wellington. Nathan had stationed agents near Brussels to monitor the battle's outcome. As soon as Wellington's victory was confirmed, an agent dispatched a coded message via carrier pigeon to London. Nathan received the news almost 24 hours before the British government or anyone else in the city. Nathan's early knowledge of the battle's outcome allowed him to make a bold financial move. The British stock market had been in turmoil due to uncertainty over Napoleon's threat. Using his inside information, Nathan began selling British government bonds, creating panic and driving prices down. Just as others started selling, Nathan reversed course, buying massive quantities of bonds at rock-bottom prices. When the victory at Waterloo was officially announced, bond prices soared, netting Nathan an enormous profit. Admiration financial insiders praised Nathan's brilliance and efficiency in using intelligence to dominate the markets. Resentment. Many in the public accused him of exploiting the nation's moment of victory for personal gain. The press fanned rumors that Nathan had manipulated the market or even delayed the news for his benefit. Conspiracy theories. The incident fueled long-standing suspicions about the Rothschild family, with some accusing them of wielding secretive, unchecked power over governments and economies. Nathan's use of pigeons wasn't just about profit, it was about establishing dominance in a competitive financial world. By gaining a reputation for being the first to know and the first to act, he ensured that the Rothschild name became synonymous with precision and power. Nathan was driven by a desire to expand the Rothschild empire and prove that the family's methods could outpace traditional banking houses. His success at Waterloo cemented the Rothschild status as the preeminent financiers of Europe. Nathan's system was a precursor to modern communication networks. It demonstrated how leveraging technology, or in this case, biology, could transform industries. By the mid-19th century, advances like the telegraph rendered carrier pigeons obsolete, but the Rothschilds' innovations laid the groundwork for integrating fast communication with finance. In the words of Niall Ferguson's The House of Rothschild, Nathan's pigeons weren't just birds. They were symbols of his unparalleled foresight. He understood that information, delivered faster than the competition, was the key to controlling markets. This story epitomizes the Rothschild approach, a blend of innovation, audacity, and a willingness to challenge conventions to secure their place in history. Nathan understood that controlling information was as valuable as controlling money. His use of carrier pigeons allowed him to act on intelligence faster than anyone else. When news spread of Nathan's bold investments, many accused him of exploiting the nation's victory for personal gain. The London press labeled him as calculating and opportunistic, acrimonious. Nathan's rivals and critics painted him as a manipulator, but his family defended his actions as brilliant strategy. Nathan was not loved, but he was respected. His genius lay in understanding that markets moved not on facts, but on perception. James Rothschild played a pivotal role in stabilizing France after Napoleon's defeat, managing massive reparations owed to other European powers. The French government turned to the Rothschilds because of their unparalleled financial expertise and international connections. From private banking to central banks, as the scale of economies grew, governments began to rely less on private banking dynasties and more on centralized institutions. This shift brought stability but also new complexities. The rise of global institutions. As the scale of economies grew, governments began to rely less on private banking dynasties and more on centralized institutions. This shift brought stability but also new complexities. The gold standard emerged as a global monetary system in the late 19th century. It was a system where the value of a country's currency was directly linked to a specific amount of gold. This innovation was driven by powerful governments, prominent bankers, and economists who sought stability in a rapidly industrializing world. Key figures include Nathan Mayer Rothschild and other banking leaders who saw gold as the foundation for secure international trade. William Gladstone, a British statesman who championed the adoption of the gold standard in Britain. Influential economists and policymakers who debated its merits in financial hubs like London, Paris, and Vienna. The gold standard gained traction in the 1870s, starting with Britain in 1821 after it officially adopted gold as the basis for its currency. Other countries, including Germany, France, and the United States, followed suit in the late 19th century. The key meeting places for discussions and debates were in financial capitals like London and Paris, where bankers, politicians, and industrialists convened to shape global economic policy. The 19th century saw unprecedented industrial growth and international trade. Countries needed a reliable system to value currencies across borders. Gold was universally recognized and accepted, creating a stable foundation for trade. Paper money, without gold backing, was seen as unstable and prone to inflation. Britain's dominance in global trade and finance positioned it to lead the charge in establishing the gold standard. Bankers, especially families like the Rothschilds, saw gold as a way to stabilize markets and ensure their investments retained value. The gold standard was met with mixed reactions. Merchants, bankers, and industrialists hailed it as a way to foster trust in currencies and make trade predictable. Farmers and workers in debt opposed it, as the rigid link to gold often led to deflation, making their debts harder to repay. The system was seen by many as benefiting the wealthy while leaving the poor vulnerable. William Gladstone, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, stood firm in the parliamentary debate of 1816. William Gladstone, gold is not merely a metal, it is trust. It transcends borders, languages, and disputes. By anchoring our pound to gold, we ensure Britain's dominance in trade and its stability in times of turmoil. Yet there were voices of opposition. Opposition member, and what of the farmer in Yorkshire? The miner in Cornwall? When gold prices rise, their wages won't. Are we to bind our nation's fate to a lump of yellow metal? William Gladstone. The alternative, sir, is chaos. Paper money inflates, trust evaporates. Gold is our foundation, unshakable and eternal. In a private meeting in London, 1820, Nathan Rothschild laid out his vision. Nathan Rothschild. The merchants want predictability, the traders trust. Gold offers both. If we secure Britain's currency to it, the world will follow. Associate. But Nathan, it's not without risk. A bad harvest, a war, gold reserves will dwindle. Will the people stand for it? Nathan Rothschild. Let them try another way and watch their markets crumble. Gold is certainty. With it, we control not just commerce, but confidence itself. By 1821, Nathan Rothschild's vision was realized. Britain became the first major economy to adopt the gold standard, creating a ripple effect across Europe. Germany joined in the early 1870s, bolstered by reparations paid in gold after its victory in the Franco-Prussian War. The United States followed, tying the dollar to gold with the Coinage Act of 1873. In a meeting in Berlin, 1873, the German officials discussed their strategy. German official: our reserves are strong. By adopting the gold standard, we send a message. Germany is not just a military power, but a financial one. Banker: and if reserves fall, German official, then we do what Britain does, expand our empire, acquire more gold. While it created stability for trade, the gold standard had a dark side. Deflation. A limited supply of gold often led to falling prices, which hurt debtors and reduced wages. Economic inequality: wealthy creditors benefited from the system, while workers and farmers bore its brunt. Farmer: they say gold brings stability, but all it's brought me is a higher debt and a hungry family. Banker: without gold, your money would be worthless. Do you prefer the chaos of inflation? Farmer: I prefer food on my table. The system remained dominant until the early 20th century, when the Great Depression exposed its flaws. By tying currencies to a finite resource, the gold standard often restricted economic growth in times of crisis. It was eventually abandoned during the mid-20th century, replaced by fiat currencies and managed monetary policies. The gold standard was both a triumph and a burden, a system that fostered global trade and stability, but often at the cost of human hardship. Its legacy endures as a reminder of the delicate balance between economic progress and social impact. Key figures. Senator Nelson Aldrich, a powerful Republican senator who spearheaded the push for a central banking system. Paul Warburg, a German-born banker who became the intellectual architect of the Federal Reserve. J.P. Morgan, the financier whose dominance in private banking highlighted the need for systemic reform. President Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve Act into law in 1913. The Federal Reserve was created to stabilize the U.S. economy by providing a central institution to manage the money supply, interest rates, and financial panics. The idea for the Federal Reserve was conceived in 1907, during a major financial crisis. It was formalized after secretive meetings in Jekyll Island, Georgia in 1910. The Federal Reserve Act was passed on December 23, 1913, and signed into law by President Wilson. Frequent financial panics. The U.S. economy had suffered repeated bank failures and economic collapses, with the panic of 1907 being the tipping point. Need for centralization. The fragmented U.S. banking system lacked a central authority to manage liquidity during crises. International influence. Other countries, like Britain and Germany, had central banks that provided stability, and the U.S. sought to emulate them. In October 1907, a speculative frenzy led to a catastrophic crash in the stock market. Banks ran out of cash, businesses collapsed, and millions of Americans lost their savings. The nation's economy teetered on the brink of collapse. Trader 1, sell it all. The market's gone mad. Bank depositor, open the doors. My family's savings are in there. J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in America, stepped in to prevent total ruin. Using his personal fortune and influence, he orchestrated bailouts to stabilize the system. J.P. Morgan, if we let this chaos continue, there won't be a market left by morning. Gentlemen, put aside your rivalries. This is about survival. While Morgan's intervention was successful, it exposed a dangerous truth. The United States relied on the goodwill of private bankers to save its economy. A systemic solution was needed. In 1910, 6 men met in secret at Jekyll Island to draft a plan for a central banking system. They represented the nation's financial elite, including Senator Nelson Aldrich and Paul Warburg, a German-born banker with first-hand experience of European central banks. Paul Warburg. Our banking system is a relic, disorganized and prone to collapse. A central institution like Germany's Reichsbank would bring order and confidence. Senator Aldrich. But how do we sell this to the public? They'll see it as handing control to Wall Street. Paul Warburg. Then we frame it differently. Decentralize the appearance but centralize the power. Let the people believe it's for them. Their plan became the foundation of the Federal Reserve, designed to provide stability while avoiding the appearance of centralized control. After years of debate, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. It created a network of 12 regional banks overseen by a central board in Washington, D.C., balancing national oversight with regional autonomy. President Wilson, this is not a surrender to power, but a safeguard for the people. With the Federal Reserve, we ensure that no panic, no crisis, will again cripple this great nation. Yet, the act was not without controversy. Critics feared it placed too much power in the hands of bankers. Supporters, merchants, and industrialists welcomed the stability promised by the Federal Reserve. Many believed it would prevent the financial chaos of previous decades. Merchant finally, a system that can save us from these panics. It's about time we joined the modern world. Critics, farmers and populists saw it as a betrayal, claiming it gave control of the nation's money to wealthy elites. Farmer, they say this is for us, but who owns the banks? Populist leader. This Federal Reserve is a wolf in sheep's clothing. They say it's for the people, but it's Wall Street pulling the strings. The Federal Reserve ushered in a new era of economic management. It brought stability during financial crises, but also became a lightning rod for criticism. During the Great Depression, its tight monetary policies deepened the crisis, exposing the challenges of central control. Banker 1, if we loosen the money supply, we risk inflation. But if we do nothing, the economy collapses. Banker 2, either way, we're blamed. Such is the burden of the reserve. The creation of the Federal Reserve was a turning point in American history. It marked the end of financial chaos but introduced a new era of centralized control. Its story is a reminder of the delicate balance between stability and freedom, a tension that continues to shape the economy today. Montagu Norman, governor of the Bank of England from 1920 to 1944, was known for his secrecy and eccentricity. He was a key figure in global financial diplomacy. Benjamin Strong, governor of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York from 1914 to 1928, was a visionary central banker who sought international cooperation to stabilize economies. Émile Moreau, governor of the Banque de France from 1926 to 1930, was a nationalist who viewed international banking collaboration with suspicion. Hjalmar Schacht, president of the Reichsbank from 1923 to 1930, was a financial genius who helped stabilize Germany after World War I but later became controversial for his ties to the Nazi regime. These central bankers played pivotal roles in managing the global economy during the interwar period, from 1918 to 1939. They sought to stabilize currencies, manage reparations from World War I, and navigate the economic turbulence of the Great Depression. Their work spanned the 1920s and 1930s, with critical events unfolding in financial hubs like London, New York, Berlin, and Paris. The aftermath of World War I left European economies in ruins, requiring coordinated efforts to rebuild. Central bankers sought to restore the gold standard to stabilize international trade. The global economic collapse in 1929, known as the Great Depression, tested the limits of their policies. Montagu Norman and Benjamin Strong were two of the most influential central bankers of their time. Despite their contrasting personalities, Norman was enigmatic and reserved, while Strong was pragmatic and outgoing. They shared a vision for global financial stability. Montagu Norman: the world needs a stable anchor, Benjamin. If we don't restore the gold standard, international trade will crumble. Benjamin Strong: I agree, Monty, but gold alone isn't enough. We need cooperation. Central banks working together, not in isolation. Their collaboration led to coordinated efforts between the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve to stabilize currencies and promote trade. But their vision wasn't universally welcomed. Supporters, industrialists, and traders praised their efforts, believing that international cooperation would revive global commerce. Merchant in London: finally, someone's putting order to this chaos. With Norman and Strong in charge, perhaps we can trust the markets again. Critics, nationalists in Europe, and isolationists in the United States opposed such collaboration, fearing it undermined national sovereignty. Populist leader in the U.S.: are we to let foreign bankers dictate American policy? The Federal Reserve should serve us, not London. Émile Moreau, governor of the Banque de France, viewed international banking collaboration with deep suspicion. For him, central bank agreements often benefited Britain and the United States at France's expense. Émile Moreau, every agreement we sign with London weakens France. They profit from our gold reserves while our economy stagnates. No more concessions. French official. But governor, refusing cooperation could isolate us further. Émile Moreau, better isolation than submission. France's strength lies in its independence. Moreau's policies reflected a growing rift between nations, as distrust began to erode the fragile alliances built by Norman and Strong. Germany faced hyperinflation and economic collapse after World War I. Hjalmar Schacht, a brilliant but controversial banker, devised policies to stabilize the Reichsmark and restore confidence in the economy. Hjalmar Schacht: "We cannot change the past, but we can build a future. The Dawes Plan will ease reparations, stabilize our currency, and bring jobs back to Germany." German worker: "Jobs for whom? The bankers or the people?" Hjalmar Schacht: "For both. A stable Germany benefits every citizen." Schacht's efforts brought temporary relief, but the burdens of reparations and economic instability lingered, fueling resentment that later empowered extremist movements. The Great Depression exposed the limits of central banking. The gold standard, once a symbol of stability, became a straitjacket that deepened deflation and unemployment. Montagu Norman: "We must maintain the gold standard. Abandoning it would destroy what little trust remains." Émile Moreau: "Trust? Ask the unemployed masses how much they trust us. We cling to gold while people starve." Despite their best efforts, the central bankers' adherence to gold and austerity policies often exacerbated the crisis, leading to widespread criticism. Frustration: workers and farmers blamed central bankers for prioritizing gold reserves over human suffering. Worker in Berlin: "They tell us to tighten our belts while they hoard gold in their vaults. How much longer must we endure this?" Defenders: some argued that the central bankers had no choice, as abandoning gold would lead to hyperinflation and further chaos. British industrialist: "Yes, it's painful, but what's the alternative? Without discipline, the system collapses entirely." The central bankers of the interwar period were pioneers, navigating uncharted territory in a time of unprecedented challenges. Their successes and failures shaped the modern financial world. Montagu Norman's vision of cooperation, Benjamin Strong's pragmatism, Émile Moreau's nationalism, and Hjalmar Schacht's economic strategies offer enduring lessons that stability requires balance, and balance requires trust. Their stories remind us that central banking is as much about human judgment as it is about numbers. It's a delicate dance between stability and sovereignty, growth and equality, a dance that continues to shape our world today. The evolution of banking reflects humanity's drive to innovate, adapt, and overcome. From dynasties like the Rothschilds to the architects of modern central banking, their stories remind us of the profound impact finance has on society. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, subscribe and share your thoughts. What surprised you most about these stories? Let us know in the comments.